All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Rosie, are we ready to begin?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And the time is 10:47. Do we have a quorum?
Yes,
Rosie?
Madam Chair, we have a quorum with the following member absent, Mr. Paul Kaufman.
Great. Moving on to Section 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, we don't have any public comment for today's meeting.
Thank you, Rosie. It is so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Moving on to our action items. We have 2 action items on today's agenda. Our first action item is staff's recommendation to approve the SDCERS administrative budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2027. Ted, thank you very much. It's good to see you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to present our SDCERS FY 2027 budget. And before I get started on the individual numbers, we were tasked with holding the line on costs wherever possible, and I want to thank the divisional leadership for taking that very seriously. And assisting us with providing the information you see before you today. So starting off, our budget will be approximately $19.4 million. This is an increase of $232,000 or 1.2%. It's probably one of the lowest increases we've had because there are always every year going to be contractual increases for services and things like rent, et cetera. In looking at the budget components, you can quickly see that more than 60+% of our overall budget is comprised of salaries and benefits. In looking at the graph, I like this graph because it highlights the fact that SDCERS has continually right-sized the organization to meet its operations over the history from 2010, from a high of 65 to where we are today at 50, and you'll see that the number is flat at 50.
Ted, could I just ask a question on that one? To what degree were employees that are represented here, or were, replaced by contract staff? In other words, you go from 65 to 50, there was still work to be done. Has some of that been taken up with contract staff, or is this a real decline in the total numbers of people doing the work?
Greg, would you like to?
Sure. I've been here since 2018, and there have been no migrations from employees to contractors, basically the same business model. I can't really say prior to 2018, but I believe that was also true. In our latest iteration, and actually in this budget, we are actually decreasing some of the contracting and bringing a little bit of that in-house. So kind of changing that around a little bit.
And this is a loaded question, but is our staff comfortable with having 15 less people to do the job?
So if I could interject here.
Okay, Ted.
Yeah, no, because I get that, and as Greg pointed out, he came in 2017/2018. Back in 2010, systems were different. There was a lot more clerical level work, a lot of paper. In the organization now, we are more electronic in nature. We rely upon the systems to be the repository for such documents. So I would say if I was to compare where we were in 2010 with 65 people and where we are today, there's a lot less clerical work or administrative work and a lot more analytical work with the staff levels, which is why the staff levels and the positions are actually probably considered higher level than what they were back in 2010. And that was something we had discussed when Marcel was still here, and I think it's a great story to tell about the transformation of the pension system over that existing time period.
Thank you.
There was also, with the Prop B, I think there was a little bit, the staff shouldered the workload of Prop B coming back, I think, but coincidentally, there might have been some retirements that were just kind of lining up and efficiencies in place, not needing to.
So if you look from 22 onward on that graph, you see that it kind of spiked upwards, and that was more in line with the increased responsibilities we had over time. And then as we implemented changes in the pension system and through what amounted to as natural attrition, right, where people have retired from the organization, we were able to come back down to that 50. And we continually look at our operations to right-size the staffing level. So it isn't one of those things where we're trying to push people much, much harder. We're trying to leverage technology wherever possible. And Michelle does a great job with keeping the board and the committees updated on what we're doing from an IT front.
Yeah, and just to put some CIO speak or CEO speak here is that I do try to run the organization a little bit lean. And it's really a balance of making sure that we're not running the organization on overtime, that you really want to be able to, do your work within the workday and not, burn people out and have morale problems. And you want to have enough resources, but understanding there's fluctuations in the workload over different cycles. Sometimes they're monthly, sometimes they're quarterly, sometimes they're annually. And just balancing that out, having enough staff, and then looking at the workload cycles. And so we're constantly doing that, and I'm really appreciative of this committee and the board of giving the management team the flexibility to do that. And that's why I think you've seen the staffing levels go up and down, because we're really reacting to seeing where we are today and where we think we're going to be in the future. And I bring this up because I believe we are pretty lean right now, and depending on the growth of the membership, we may need to be adding more resources in member services. Depending on what's happening with regards to servicing the members, we may need more resources in benefits administration. And it seems like I'm always dreaming of more resources in IT. I feel like I've got a whole separate company that we're doing. Aside from pension administration, we have an IT company that we're also responsible for. So while I think this budget reflects well for the next coming year, I think that's a good structure. I do think in the future we may see this staffing level increase as we go forward.
In turning to the largest component of our budget, salaries and benefits are overall increasing by $159,000 for the fiscal year, and salaries and benefits are going to be $12.4 million. It should be noted that there are two main components, and obviously salaries is one of those. And you may have noticed on the budget document, the schedule, that salaries are increasing $100,000. And why does that occur? Well, it occurs for two main reasons. And the first is for classified staff when they do the step increases. That just naturally happens, and we treat it as if that increase had occurred for the full fiscal year. We get that information from the Department of Finance. In addition, we have the fringe costs, and fringe costs are primarily a pass-through cost from the city of San Diego, composed of retirement benefits and health benefits. And the city of San Diego, it should be noted, doesn't have their final fringe rates at this moment in time. So we had to go with the latest available information to allow our board to make the decision to approve our budget.
Do you recall offhand what the fringe rate is?
It's a allocation percentage, so I can't tell you, and it differs depending
Okay.
on the plan that somebody is in, whether they're a general member, general tier 2,
Okay.
for our organization. So it's not like a load rate. They used to come up with something like that, but it really wasn't beneficial for us. Oh, Christiana?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's several components that go into fringe. And
Oh,
so
yes.
some costs are fixed and some will actually fluctuate throughout the year. So my understanding is that that number, as part of the quarterly monitoring process, will kind of continue to, yes.
And we do get a true-up bill, because then the city looks at their allocations against what they actually spent and decides to give an additional bill, which is usually shortly after the fiscal year end. So it's something SDCERS receives pretty much like clockwork every year. In turning to the legal fees, our legal fees budget is $415,000, and this is an increase of $15,000 over the previous year. The litigation costs are projected to decrease by a slight amount due to the timing of litigation and the cases as they are processed through the court. It is legal's best guess as to what will happen, but obviously legal costs will have to be touched by the current fiscal year. We do have an increase to fiduciary counsel or fiduciary fees related to the use of fiduciary counsel, and once again, that's projected by legal. Our disability budget is remaining constant at $55,000. As you know, Jamar is doing an excellent job, and this is kind of projected based upon the actual administrative hearing costs associated with the various cases during the fiscal year. And turning to the last item that is, it's not part of the administrative expense schedule, but it is a outlay of capital during the year. I do have an audible to call because we had $685,000 for the projects that you see on the screen. We have a slight increase to $695,000, and the future budget schedule, and when we present to the city, will reflect the correct values. Numbers 5 and number 6 are changing. Number 5, the hardware replacements, will decrease from $40,000 to $25,000, but training tools, which is a new category for us this year to allow us to train staff, member services and IT are working on this, and they got a better estimate of the cost. That will go from $40,000 to $65,000. So instead of saving $18,000, we are saving $8,000, or approximately 1.2% of that particular category. That's our budget in a nutshell. Our mission is obviously to pay accurate and timely benefits and ensure the trust fund's safety, integrity, and growth. So we pay benefits, we manage the investment portfolio, and we report the results to this committee and the full board. And with that, I'll open this up to any questions you may have.
Does any committee member have a question or a comment?
Ted, in the breakdown on investment expenses, that's on one of the pages
Yes.
here. I don't know which page. You note that our the budget says our investment management expenses are a little bit over $42 million, right?
Correct.
And then last November, Demetrios gave us a memo on the annual private markets fee reporting. And that came up to total fee cost, I guess, it says for the period July 24 through June 25, so fiscal 25 of $71 million.
Okay.
So that's, I suppose, additive to this 42 million.
I think it probably encompasses part of this. And Greg, did you have a comment? No. Okay. So with respect, this information that you see in this schedule is the audited ACFR information. And where it comes from is from two components: directly paid costs through our custodial bank, and then something that we call a gross up recorded expense that we receive from the individual fund managers. And the way that information comes to us is that we have it. The reason why we call it a gross up expense is because that information for that particular fund comes to us at net asset value, which has already had the investment expenses deducted from it.
Okay.
What I am supposed to do is that if such information is readily available, I'm supposed to disclose it in our ACFR, which we do, and it is part of this value here. If I cannot speak towards the investment team's report out to you, I can tell you that these values have been audited by our external auditors with sufficient evidence as to what these values are for the FY 2025 year. If that number that you had mentioned is higher, I would assume that it is already incorporating these expenses.
If I can jump in real quick. And Brett, I know you're pressed for time, but I'll make this very brief. There is a major debate in the investment community and the actuarial, or not actuarial, but the accounting community is how do you account for the general partner's fees? Is it a reduction of the value or is it actually a fee? So we record direct costs, but we also have an obligation to report what is the general partner's revenue cut. So it's really not a fee, it's we share in the profits. And some people view that as sharing profits, other people view that as the limited partners paying a fee. So we disclose that, but it may not show up through this administrative budget because these are direct costs that we pay.
So these are the 41 million or whatever, or
Right.
42 million is basically, we're paying that as a fee directly to them, and the private market fees are kind of a drag on the ultimate return on investment.
Sure. And again, I don't want to speak to those, the numbers, I'm just saying, overall, there is a lot of different ways to look at it, and depending how you roll up the numbers and how you report them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion and a second? Moved by Paul, seconded by Christiana. Let's record our votes.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Rosie. Our second action item is staff's recommendation to amend the ethical conduct and training policy, the fraud and criminal acts policy, return to work after retirement policy, and the securities litigation policy. Staff does not have any prepared remarks for these recommended changes. Are there any questions? Wow, hearing none.
I think
Oh, wait.
You did a great
Wait, you
job.
did it. You already said no.
you did a great job, Johnny.
Great, Johnny. Thank you for this. May I have a motion and a second from the committee?
Madam Chair, was moved by Paul Lotz, seconded by Brett Bartolotta. Please feel free to cast your votes.
Okay.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. Okay, moving on to the report section. Member Services Division report. Natasha.
Still morning? Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so January was a very, very busy month for the call center. So we had over 2,000 incoming and outgoing calls in January alone. The call center handled a high number of inquiries related to the 1099 forms, portal access, and drop. The average wait time was up to 3 minutes and 9 seconds, which was higher than our target. This is because we are down 2 staff members. We had a higher call volume and obviously the usual staff absences. So that's another reason we are very, very excited to share that we have a new call center employee that just started last week, Nayeli Kano, and she joined us from the city's treasurer's department. So we won't see immediate relief because it's a 3-month onboarding process. And I want to just, as an aside, make mention that we are working with IT on a exciting tool so that when somebody calls the call center and someone's training and the system will listen to the call And then on the screen, something should pop up and say, oh, this person's calling about reciprocity. Here's a link. Here's some information. So I wanted to thank IT because they are helping us look for this tool, and we are very excited in the coming months to get that implemented. The goal is to decrease the onboarding time because we want to make sure that everybody answering the phone is well trained, and this would hopefully help speed up the process. So we are very, very excited about that possibility. Another thing I wanted to mention, you might recall in the January board meeting, the port mentioned that they wanted to work more closely with, in communication with the SDCERS. And so Sandra and I actually met with the port's new HR director. And we have a long list of short-term and long-term goals that we want to accomplish to improve communications and ways that we can assist them. So that was something that we started with the port, and I think we're already seeing some benefit from those conversations. In addition, Jessica and I met with the airport's new HR representative. Lots of changes everywhere. And so we're discussing how we can improve and do more with the airport and their members as well. So continuing the theme of communication and service and member services, just last week, I, along with Victoria Westfall and Jessica Taylor and Trustee Brewster, attended the SDCERS Communication and Member Services Summit in San Diego. Victoria presented a demo of the SDCERS member portal, and Jessica presented a mini case study on the use of AI for an educational video. They both did a great job, and they represented SDCERS well. It's very timely for us to also go to that conference because while there's a lot of great topics, some that we were very interested in were where a few systems walked through their website redesign process. And it's very timely because we just started our process and our launch meeting this month. And again, it's going to be a long process. It'll take about 6 to 8 months, but we are at the beginning stages, and we're very excited to get that going. And then lastly, the Winter 2026 Scoop newsletter was distributed, if everyone received that, hopefully. This mailing will be the final mass print distribution, as we are going to be transitioning to an email delivery starting in summer 2026. So we did have an article in the newsletter telling people that if they wanted to continue receiving a paper copy, they could call us. I don't know, does anyone want to guess how many calls we got? We had about 30 members requesting that they get a mail copy, so not a very high number at all. So we will, again, monitor that and keep an eye on how that's going and how that transition works. So the goal is obviously to be more efficient and reduce costs. So that is something that we're looking forward to. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
So Natasha, a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciated in the scoop that goes out to actives as well as retired, right? This explanation of how you could put something in your will or trust to advise your executor to get in touch with SDCERS as early as possible, so we're less likely to have overpayments. So, and you and I know this was actually read by at least one retiree who got in touch with me and asked for some details, and I won't get down into the specifics of that. But so that was great to see that in there. I also really appreciated you putting in the stuff about encouraging people to register for the portal. There was only one issue there that concerned me a little bit. So, and I understand you guys are really trying to encourage people to sign up for the portal, but you had a line in here saying, creating your account helps prevent someone else from registering on your behalf and accessing your information without your knowledge.
Yes.
And I was a little bit concerned about that because essentially it seemed to say, we can't protect you from somebody registering on your behalf, so hurry up and register so that doesn't happen. I was just a little worried that people would take it that way.
Yeah.
But last question is, we have this issue of the call center, and it seems to be a continual one of retaining people. And as you said, it takes 3 months to train them so that they can do this. And there seems to be continual churn understandably, because this is a fairly low-paid assignment, is there something that Colin can do for us, or that we can do to reclassify them in some other classification or something, so that the compensation is such that we're not getting this churn? And I'm mindful of that case in LA or whatever, where the pension system wanted its own classification, and the city, I guess? County said no, and so this goes into court, and I don't know how that was resolved.
It's
but-
still in court.
Yeah, but I just, this seems like an ongoing issue, and that call center is so important to our members to be able to get there, and I would like to see some plan that we might embark upon to reduce churn.
If I can jump in, it is pretty standard for call centers to actually have a high turnover rate. That is just part of the nature of the business. And I would say that SDCERS actually has a pretty good success at actually retaining employees in our call center, I think longer than average. It's kind of anecdotal. I haven't studied it, but we do have some good continuity there. And we have been working with the personnel department. And similar to LA County, we have made certain successes for various classifications here at SDCERS. And this is one of the ones that we are continuing to work through the bureaucratic process with the personnel department in how to best leverage their classification structure and give them the information they need to help us recruit and retain employees. So definitely on the same page here, and we're continuing to work on that.
Thank you, Natasha. You're doing a
you.
great job.
Thank you.
Benefits Administration, Sandra.
Good morning. How are you? Okay. You have my Benefits Administration Division report in your materials, but I wanted to provide a little bit more detail on some of the items that were mentioned. Last week, the audit committee met, and Sarah presented her findings on the corrections audit. Her review noted the absence of a formal corrections policy with timelines for completion of the corrections, as well as limitations in the Excel spreadsheet that staff had been using to track those issues. In addition, one of the purchase of service adjustments included in her audit contained a duplicate record that had been entered manually in error. And there was one instance in which I did not timely inform the board of an adjustment that was made to a member account related to additional salary that had come over from the city. Historically, we've never had a corrections audit. So I think that it was very helpful in identifying opportunities to strengthen our processes. And we've already implemented improvements to the corrections log, and a comprehensive corrections policy and procedure document has been created, and it's circulating with senior staff currently. I did want to provide a little bit of context to the corrections activity. As the board knows, SDCERS makes adjustments to member accounts for various reasons. In reviewing the 2025 corrections log, I found that corrections stemmed from a variety of issues, including plan sponsor updates to salary and member status. Corrections resulting from the Port District audit were big last year. Proposition B, military leave purchases, were an issue. And reciprocal salary updates are a constant. Of the corrections reflected in the log, I identified 9 matters that I would characterize as SDCERS staff or system programming errors. For context, in 2025, the Benefits Administration Division completed approximately 12,580 workflows, and those involve benefit estimates, application processing, purchases of service, transmittal posting, reciprocity processing, member deposits and adjustments. So based on that volume, the 9 identified errors represent an error rate of approximately 0.07%. We're striving for 0%, but we're coming pretty close. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
So thank you, for being accountable and talking about this. But I want to speak in some depth on this issue. When a city employee, or I suppose for the port and the airport, nears retirement, we typically, I certainly did, go to SDCERS and say, what's my benefit going to be? And you'll have this opportunity at some point, probably sooner rather than later, Brett, I hope for you. And it's complicated calculations that are made. And so those of us who are in that process really rely totally on benefits administration. I don't think I've talked to any retiree who said, yeah, I think they had it wrong here, and so I got them to jack up my retirement a little bit or whatever it may be. The way that SDCERS, according to this audit, learns about problems is either the member says, I think I'm underpaid. They probably don't often say they're overpaid, or the plan sponsor noting some sort of error. At least that's what the audit says. And look, I've heard stories over the years of errors and people being frustrated by them. And remember that we have had this case not too long ago about the individual from the airport who called in multiple times, I think, asking if his benefit was correct and was essentially, it was mishandled. And this ultimately resulted in a lot of discussion at the board to try to make him whole or to try to reduce the impact, but he's just one of those. I was hoping that there would be a presentation. I was at the audit committee, and I was hoping there would be a presentation here from Sarah, because our job is to oversee the business of SDCERS, and this is a business matter. And I think we really need to hear from the auditor when this kind of thing comes up. But I just want to mention the specific statements here. Benefits administration does not have a policy to ensure all corrections are logged and monitored to completing. There are no established timelines to indicate how long it should take to resolve a correction. Data inputs into the corrections logs were not always accurate. The principal and interest accounts for 2 out of 10 did not agree with source calculations. Correction calculations were not always correct. 1 out of 10 calculations tested was not accurate. 1 member out of 14 tested was missing from the corrections, and I think this is what Sandra was talking about, that's communicated to the board. I shared this with the Retired Employees Association Board of Directors, and quite honestly, they were just appalled that we were in this situation. And I think the issue is, from my perspective, is we had this problem that came up, a couple of years ago. And there was plenty of opportunity between then and now to do some of the things that were recommended in the audit. And we had to wait for the auditor to come and find these things to get some sort of action on them. It is a core responsibility. I understand it's complicated, but it is a core responsibility of a pension system to get benefit calculations right. So these last 3 years, from my perspective, benefits administration could have been fixing some of this. And this really gets into our issues of our core values of being fiduciaries, the transparency, and so forth. So I think there are a whole bunch of great recommendations in the audit, and I'm really glad that management essentially said, yeah, you're right, we're going to do all these things. That's good. But absent that audit, what might have happened? What's missing in the audit from my perspective, sorry, Sarah, is the possible need for more staff, which is one of the reasons I asked this earlier. Is that contributing in some way to this? And the possible need for more training. In other words, are miscalculations due to training issues? And to be clear, the audit didn't address the accuracy of initial benefit calculations. So all the audit went to look at is if a problem arose from something advised to us by the plan sponsor or the member who happened to notice something that they thought was wrong. That's what Sarah was looking at, correct, Sarah?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the scope of it. So what we don't know is the quality of calculations of just general member benefits, what I was talking about earlier about when you go in and ask. I think that hopefully the auditor is, and in talking to Sarah, that's hopefully something that they will do in the future. I think it's badly needed to have some independent look at that. And it may turn out that they're being done perfectly, and it may not. But I think we as board members can't really properly do our jobs if we're unaware of these things. I mean, it's impossible to recommend changes when we don't know what the problems are. So thank you very much, Sarah, for coming to us with this or going through the process. I know it was probably uncomfortable in certain ways, but it's good that we are where we are. I just wish we had been there sooner. Thank you.
Okay.
Any follow-up comment?
I mean, I guess if we're starting with a premise of that benefits administration doesn't accurately calculate a benefit, I would fundamentally disagree. Yes, there were some errors, especially in that the tracking of these corrections wasn't perfect. When I started a couple of years ago, there was a Word document that had the lists of people who had pending corrections. Obviously not very usable, not very searchable, so the first thing we did was to create an Excel spreadsheet that was also not super great. And it was never meant to be replacement for a policy or auditable. It was just sort of a tracking tool. We certainly recognize the deficiencies and have moved forward. And again, in the corrections that I looked at from last year, the 9 that were our errors, 5 of them were issues with the annual supplemental benefit not being calculated correctly. If we had multiple beneficiaries who were receiving that ASB, the system just didn't do the split right. So that, that's 5 out of the 9. One was a community property case where we didn't have the right split. One was a disability benefit that had the wrong effective date. So, I mean, these are very kind of one-off situations, and none of them were related to benefit setups.
Sandra, how are you notified of an error? I mean, how does it get on your list?
Yeah.
Your corrections list?
Yes. So staff finds a lot of these.
How?
In doing these setups, when we pay the annual supplemental benefit, staff actually goes through and looks at the thousands of payments and sees, okay, is this the same as last year? They look at the splits. Do these splits make sense? So I think we have about, I looked at maybe 5 what we call problem incident reports, PIRs, that are pending to fix the ASB issues before we pay it again next year. So I'm hoping that next year will really look much better, and we may not have those same kind of 5 or so incidents where the split wasn't correct. We do sometimes have members call. The gentleman who we got additional salary from had actually called the city and reported that, gee, for the last few years, I haven't been getting this add-on pay. So that was a correction that came over. We receive notices from reciprocal systems. CalPERS will send us a letter that says someone has broken reciprocity. Now we've got to fix that. Plan sponsor issues are probably the biggest volume of corrections. They don't put somebody back in after they return to leave, or you've got, again, add-on pays that weren't accurate. Sarah's audit from the Port District required a lot of recalculations. Hundreds were done.
Right.
But the Prop B is just a gift that keeps on giving. A lot of corrections and updates that come in from that.
Sarah, have you ever done an audit of just the member's benefit? If the benefit's been calculated properly?
While she's sitting down, just occasionally I'll casually run the benefits longhand for the firefighters and been within like $40 to $50 of the benefit calculator regularly, for what that's worth.
You guys have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah.
Yes, so my predecessor conducted a benefits calculation audit. I can't remember the year, and I have also conducted one. I'm trying to look at when the audit report was issued. But as Chris mentioned, when I conduct the annual risk assessment and develop the audit plan, I developed an audit plan that kind of looked 2 or 3 years out. And so tentatively on the 2027 fiscal year audit plan, I have slated for a benefits calculation audit. Of course, that has to go through the risk reassessment process this year and then get approved by the audit committee, but that is tentatively on the plan.
All right. Thank you. Well, are there any other questions? If not, let's move.
I don't have a question. I do just have a quick comment. It can be difficult sometimes when you do an audit. It can be easy to see something in a vacuum, right? It's just this thing that occurs here, as opposed to the bigger process of what folks were kind of doing all along. I am heartened by the fact that if there was an audit and there were recommendations from it, and staff was like, "Yep, I will take all those recommendations," and I appreciate too the having Chris kind of comment on, is this something we could have caught earlier? But I'm wondering then if board members take a look at like the audit plan kind of going forward, and we have questions like, does SDCERS have all the right policies in place? Like, I don't know if that becomes part of that work plan to kind of do like a policy kind of look, because if there's other items that staff are already working on, it can be difficult to, there could be 50 rocks to kick over and not enough staff to do that all at once, right? So I just wanted to kind of offer that perspective.
Yeah, benefits is unusual. It's a little different than like payroll. And with payroll, you can rely on the recipient bringing an error, forward. But those benefits are so difficult to calculate that you can't rely on the members, on the retirees, to bring forward an error. So as you were speaking and saying that your staff would review it, I wonder if there are other ways that we can now use AI or automate that to go through and see if possibly something, falls out.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Bobby, because that's something I've mentioned to this committee and the board before, is in looking to the future, how do we leverage artificial intelligence? And Natasha is probably ahead of the curve on most of the other parts of the organization of implementing those tools, but we're starting to see more tools available for pension systems in that, and looking at your data and looking for data anomalies. Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but staff does look at payroll, listings, and when you're setting people up or you're calculating things, are there outliers from your expected result to what your result is? So there are analytical tools that staff currently uses to see, does this look right? Does it look reasonable? That type of thing. So we are looking to leverage technology in that area to help us identify these. I do know that when we set people up for retiree payroll, that we do audit the accounts, and that's also a time when we find where we've missed service credit, or the salary's wrong, or there's an unexpected result. So could we do better in identification? Yes. When I first got here, the databases were not clean as they are today, and we had, if we look back at old action plans, We had project after project after project of data scrubbing, looking at these types of analyses and, looking at those. So we've had a long history of actually doing these types of analyses, looking for errors, data problems, and fixing things. As one of our longstanding members, you remember Tanasi, and there was one point where we had a board member asking us, would you stop picking up the shiny objects and kicking over stones? Because we were going through so many audits and correcting so many things and bringing them to the attention of the board and the committee of saying, look, we're trying to clean the databases. We're trying to get ready for technology. We're trying to make sure that as we move forward, we've got a clean information set. We were finding all these old historical problems, which back in the old days, you would never, ever, 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 ever come across these things.
Right.
Unless you did a tested transactions audit, which many organizations used to do. So we're very aware of that as management. And I do want to just make a comment. One of my favorite veto messages that came out of the state of California was a governor that said, not every issue needs a new law. And I kind of feel that with corrections. The recommendation is that you should have a policy on corrections. I'm like, to me, it's more of a cultural issue. When you find a problem, you fix it. I don't need a policy to tell me to do that. That is just inherent in what we do. Should we write it down? Okay. But I will say that the culture of the organization is that when we come across a problem, first you find out, is it an individual problem? Is it systemic? How do we fix it? How do we prevent it from happening again? That's just basic things. And we can write down a policy that says that. And I think that's good because it helps for training. I mean, which is why management said, yeah, let's do that. Let's take the time to do that. As regards to timing, it's like you do it immediately. You don't say, well, I'm going to wait a month. It's just, you're supposed to get things done right away. Documenting it is a good idea. Again, I'm not refuting that, but I just want to let you know that the culture of the organization is very important. I think we have a culture that really wants to do things correctly. And when you find a problem, you fix it. So I just want to provide the committee some assurances. It's not like we're ignoring things or not thinking about them or apathetic. Not at all. We really care for our members and we really want to do a good job.
But don't belittle my policy. It's pretty good.
Okay. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you for the time.
No, thank you for your comments. And Chris, thank you for your thoroughness in going through all of these issues. We appreciate it.
Thanks. I had one other comment on Sandra's report, but maybe you wanted to finish your report.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the Benefits Administration and Member Services groups who got together and updated our annual reminder letters that go out every spring. We send letters out to the members who owe us money, reminding them that they need to resolve these issues before July 1 or they get hit with interest again. This year, the team actually went through, there's about 45 people, and calculated what the current amount is. In the past, we've just said, pay it before interest accrues again. Now the letter has a lot kind of stronger language about resolving this, and it has better detail on the principal and interest amounts that have been accruing. So we're hoping that might shake loose some of these payments and resolve some of these.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a preliminary question and I have some comments here. Greg, we received sometime in, I'm going to say January, just before you left town, a couple of letters from a member regarding her concerns about an issue that came up. She had written them on November 10th, and we received them in January from you. Could you explain that one?
Certainly. I would say in my daily routine, my instance of getting actually physical letters is near zero. I just don't get correspondence. And I will accept the failure when my assistant took an extended leave. I did not probably check that mailbox because generally that mailbox is always empty. So that fault is on mine. Traditionally, when we get mail that's member-related, I generally don't see it. It's supposed to go to the member services, and they are the point of contact for members. In this case, the envelope was addressed to me, but inside was a letter to the board. I think if there had been addressed to the board, I think we would have rerouted that. It would not have languished in my box. So that's my failure. And as soon as I checked that mailbox and found that letter, I immediately sent that to the board. So that's my timing failure.
Thanks. So, I guess everybody got a copy of the letter, but the gist of this is that a beneficiary, 77-year-old widow, who had Kaiser Health Insurance and was on an 8-month waiting list for a knee surgery, came up from one of our death reporting services indicating that she had died. And as near as I can tell, and please interrupt me if I get something wrong, that was sort of logged in our system as presumed dead. And her benefits were suspended. Letters sent to her, I guess, other beneficiaries or whatever, saying condolences and so on. The city's healthcare administrator, who has access to the SDCERS system, saw this, also presumed that she was dead and canceled her Kaiser Health Insurance, which, and she didn't hear about any of this until her personal physician, and I know this because I talked to her about it, her personal physician got in touch with her and said, hey, how come you're not on the list for the knee surgery anymore? What happened? So then she writes this, so then she contacted a prior employee she worked with and that I worked with as well, and he told her how to get in touch with the people administering the healthcare system. They quickly said, oh, we thought you had died, and so they reinstated her. She got back with Kaiser. Apparently all of her prescription history has been wiped out as a result of this, but apparently her knee surgery is back on track. Then she got in touch with SDCERS, I'm assuming through the call center, and when I talked to her, she said people were very responsive to getting her back into the system and indicating that, you know, putting in the system that she was alive and sending out within a week or two the back pay. And then she writes a letter to us, or 2 letters actually, which to me are really valuable to get member feedback on these kinds of things. Because how are we as a board supposed to perform our oversight role if we don't know when these kinds of things come up? Our CEO did send that to us sometime in January, and not with an explanation as he's just provided about why this wasn't forwarded to us sooner, but I looked at that and sent an email to the member apologizing and inviting her to contact me if she wished to, and she called me the following day and said, thank you very much. You're the first person at SDCERS that has apologized to me for this since this happened. And that is very disappointing. So I contacted Natasha, let her know my conversation, also Bobby and some other folks, just to be sure, or Lisa Marie and so on. And I believe Lisa Marie asked our CEO to give the member a call and apologize as well. And ultimately, I think this has all been worked out. It's not a perfect outcome, but that is what occurred. I appreciate, Sandra, in your report that you say that the death notification procedures are going to change such that you're going to make efforts to contact the member directly, the presumed deceased member directly, and make further efforts to contact them. But I I'm really disappointed by how this was handled and how this member was treated. And I feel it's should not be necessary for the president of the board to ask the CEO to call a member and apologize for a screw-up like that. And in future, Greg, I want to make it crystal clear. If a letter is sent by a member to this board and it is delayed at all, I am going to consider that a serious management failure. That is your job, and it is the member's right to get in touch with us whenever they want and complain about whatever they want so that we have the opportunity to take whatever action we may deem appropriate. So let's make sure none of this happens again.
Thank you.
You know, I believe that Lisa Marie called and sent a letter. Greg called.
I think Johnny also.
Johnny called. And it certainly could have been handled earlier. But I think, I understand the issue with the letter languishing in a mailbox. It was unfortunate that occurred. But I think when it did become known, everybody jumped on it. So it's sort of one of those issues, isn't it? With we're all accustomed to receiving things electronically these days, and I don't always open my mail, my handwritten mail, but I'm sure we're going to be more careful with that in the future. But anyway, Chris, do you have anything else?
No more good news.
Okay.
Thank you.
You had a busy week.
Well, it's been 2 months.
All right, Michelle, information technology.
Okay, that's a tough update to top. But I've got some exciting updates to provide from the IT group. I usually make this very quick and short, but there are a lot of changes happening within our group and a lot of projects in progress. So I want to start with personnel updates. The IT team is comprised of SDCERS staff as well as technologists from 3 different master service agreements from CGI, SDCERS, Sagitech. Some of those consultants are co-located within our team on site. Some of them are dedicated to us but still work remote. And then we have many partial employees that support various services. So each of these team members that comprise of our IT team, which is a total of 10 full-time employees across those 3 employers, each of these play a critical role. So anytime there is change in these roles, it's an impact to our team. So I'm happy to announce several people who have moved on to retirement and ready to introduce some replacements. So first, John Postlethwaite was our CGI database administrator. He supported our account for over 2 years. His time was split between SDCERS and the City of San Diego. He decided late last year to ease into retirement and start working part-time, and thus leaving our account and solely dedicating to the City of San Diego. We were very fortunate that he agreed to stay on board supporting our account until CGI was able to find an adequate replacement. So as of February this year, I'm happy to introduce Wei Xiao, who joined our team as his replacement. Wei has extensive knowledge in extensive database experience, both supporting on-premise and cloud environments, and a strong background supporting high availability, performance fine-tuning, and an emphasis in database security and encryption. And what's also unique about Wei is that she is one of our first database administrators who lives locally and can come on site and work directly with our team. So that has really enhanced the collaborations within our team. Next, I want to announce that Joe Saucedo, our SDCERS application administrator, announced his retirement in mid-April of this year. Joe has been an important part of the SDCERS team for the past 6 years. His responsibilities of administering all the enterprise applications, as well as managing the release process of our pension administration system. Aside from Joe's roles and responsibilities, he's always brought a positive energy to the team. He always shows up with a smile, and he's always happy to jump in and help anybody out within the SDCERS or IT team or outside with anything that needs to get done. So upon notice, we started the recruitment process. We had a good response to this posting, and through a competitive interview process, I'm happy to announce that this position was offered and accepted by somebody you guys all know, which is Blanca Gomez. You may be wondering that she's already on the team. So how does this change? So Blanca's currently supporting SDCERS through the CGI contract. This brings her on board in more of an administrative role in managing those services. We're working with CGI to find a replacement of her role, which has been help desk triage, business analytics, and also supporting the boardroom technologies. So thank you for accepting, Blanca. Lastly, and prepare yourself for this one, Bobby, Alfredo Nieto, our ZenSAR desktop engineer, retired effective the end of February.
I just can't even believe that.
Your name came up a lot, and he was sorry he couldn't be here to say goodbye himself.
Was that your 911 call or something?
Totally.
He was.
He dialed.
He always answered on the first ring. Alfredo supported SDCERS for over 15 years across 3 different service providers dating all the way back to DPC. His dedication to customer service was highlighted by his nomination by ZenSAR as Employee of the Year in 2025. He made a lasting impression with SDCERS, not only with the I team, but many members of the business. We wish him well in his travels and in his tennis playing, and he'll be greatly missed. Before leaving, he did work with ZenSAR to find his successor, and I'm happy to introduce Jason Smith to the team, who I think is in the back of the room. Jason is also not new to the SDCERS team, as he was one of those individuals that supported us in a partial way as our voice network engineer. So anytime we had voice network issues, he would be the one dispatched on site. So we knew when Alfredo recommended him that he fit our culture, and we haven't been wrong so far, so we welcome him to the team. And that's not all. So over the last few months, the IT management team, which includes myself, Norma, and Sean, have spent a considerable amount of time reviewing our strategic plan and updating that for the next fiscal year and forecasting that out for the next 3 years, defining that roadmap and priorities and budget. And through that process, we identified a gap in the infrastructure side. To address this, we believe the best solution is to onboard an additional information systems analyst, and this role will help to strengthen our infrastructure support while also creating some better continuity and succession planning for both the application and the infrastructure services. So we anticipate beginning this recruitment next month and hope to have a person to introduce to the board in the next few months. So that concludes all the personnel updates. Since we have so many projects in progress right now, I'm only going to highlight on a few. But I'm happy to answer any questions on anything else that you saw in my board reports. As I mentioned, we've had a significant amount of work updating our multi-year IT strategic plan, and I hope to have that finalized and presented to you at the start of the next fiscal year. We're working on, we want to review the organization action plan and make sure that everything is in alignment with the business needs and what IT's planned priorities are for the next few years. This week, we are in the middle of a production migration to upgrade our financial system. In fact, following today's committee meeting, our team is meeting to address a few post-production activities before formally closing this project. And this was a significant effort because this system cannot skip versions. So during this upgrade, it's essentially doing 3 upgrades in one. I wanted to recognize Norma Frank for her excellent work managing this project. She did a great job coordinating with both our finance team and our vendor to keep things on track. I'd like to also thank Blanca, Joe, and Ted, along with the entire finance team. Everybody's been very responsive and supportive throughout this project, which has been very critical to the success. Microsoft 365 and the domain change. So this has been a major undertaking by our team. And just to be clear, this is 2 projects combined into one. They could have both been done independently, but we decided to combine them for simplicity in the long term. But the immediate term makes this a very complex and very detailed and requires a lot of collaboration with SDCERS, with the City of San Diego, and with some of our outside vendors. So the most impacting, I'll spare you a lot of the details of this project, but the most impacting to the end users, which also impacted all of you, was the migration of our Exchange environment into the cloud. And we have our full IT team here to help support all of you guys to ensure you have the access you need. During this migration, not everything went as planned, but we prepare for that. The team rallied and we were able to find solutions very quickly and go and remediate those issues and get people back on track without impacting business or operations. There's still a significant amount of work to remain behind the scenes, and our team is working to migrate all the production server environments into this new domain over what we're calling a 4-day weekend when we have a Tuesday off at the end of this month. We hope to get all the production, what our business needs, up and running on Monday, but there's several ancillary systems that we may need. We're going to use that extra time to ensure that if there's any unexpected issues, we have that time to work with. This has been a very complex project. It's involved everybody on the IT team, and I greatly appreciate everybody's support and work on this. An additional project that Chris asked me to highlight, last month, or at the last board meetings in January, you approved the board modernization project. This was to bring all the technologies in this boardroom up to the same broadcasting and bandwidth so that we could create a more secure and reliable environment. And the need for that was shown on the day after this committee meeting on Friday when we had a failure of the system. Those issues are very hard to diagnose and to find the root cause when they're not real time. So the team worked after the meetings to try to reproduce more than a dozen times. The issue couldn't be recreated. But what we're hoping is, and what we had anticipated, which was why this project was prioritized, is that we can create a stable environment in here with this project to ensure that we can avoid that in the future. So that project was kicked off last month. We've worked with the AV vendor. He's come and done a walkthrough. Greg gave his blessing on some of the configuration changes that'll happen in this month. What I anticipate you will see is before the May meetings or at the May meetings, we'll have a demo station set up so you can see how the new configuration will be set up. And then following the May meeting, we'll start demoing all the AV equipment that's in this room and the room behind you that is actually managing the meetings. And then by the July meeting, we'll be using a new system. Last thing I want to make note of is I want to recognize Sandeep Kumar on our team from CGI. He was awarded the Dean's Scholarship in recognition of academic merit to pursue the Master of Science in Applied Artificial Intelligence in Regis University. Now, if that's not impressive enough, this is only to complement his already impressive education accomplishment of 2 master's degrees in software engineering and cybersecurity engineering. as well as ongoing doctorate in studies in computer science with a concentration in cybersecurity and information assurance. So I feel very fortunate that he has stuck with us and he continues to support SDCERS. He has a wealth of knowledge and he is a huge asset on our team. That concludes my updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
First of all, I am ecstatic of this migration to 365. I get these emails from Melanie once a year saying, use the SDCERS email system, but it was too hard to use, so I hardly ever did. Now, I have it in my regular Outlook, and it's much better. So thank you so much for that. I know that it was kind of rocky, but Sean took care of me in the middle of it all, and it's working great. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Well, that was a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from staff? We have reports in our board packet from Johnny, Ted, and Johnny, the compliance report. Any comments, Johnny, you want to add? So moving on to section 5.
I have a comment, though. Sorry. I have a question in your report, Johnny, about, this is the legal report, right? About the additional contributions issue. So you said in the report, staff continues to research the administration of the municipal code provisions related to additional contributions. In March, staff are meeting with fiduciary counsel and the actuary to address the matter. It says staff continues to research. I mean, obviously I submitted a fairly extensive memorandum about this, but I hadn't noticed in prior reports that you were researching this previously.
I have been researching it previously.
Okay, just didn't tell us about it. Okay.
Well, there's minor updates. I mean, a lot of what I do as a background, we're trying to understand this arcane program that's been on the books and having trouble understanding why we can't find any record of it. So what does that mean? How do we do it? What are our limitations? What's our discretion to do that? These are all questions that we have been trying to tackle so we can get this to the point where we can answer the questions to have this board do something about it if that's what they want to do. And so my update is a more significant one, in that we were able to talk to our fiduciary counsel to get advice on different legal issues, as well as our actuary. And so that was very helpful. So we continue to push this forward.
So are we legally obligated, morally, ethically, whatever, to follow the plan?
Loaded question. I don't think let's put things in the right perspective, sir.
Okay. Then fine, I won't ask you to answer that question. Our core goals and core values state clearly that we will follow the plan.
Yeah, I think our job is to administer the plan, absolutely.
Right. And it's not up to us to decide whether the city might want at some future time to amend the plan to say something different. So currently, board policy, the municipal code, the city charter extend this benefit to members. And we became aware 2 years ago this May that our policy was incorrect in stating that the IRS barred us from extending this benefit. Why does it take 2 years to research this and get it sorted out?
Would you like me to jump in there, Counselor? Sure. So thank you. We have talked about this a few times here at the committee and also at the board. The additional contributions program is in the municipal code and in the charter. Agree with that, Mr. Brewster. And I firmly believe that SDCERS' role is an administrative role. We administer the benefits as laid out in the plan. So you and I agree with that, Mr. Brewster. However, plan design firmly lies with the plan sponsor, the city, the port, and the airport. This additional contributions program is a supplemental program. It is not part of the defined benefit. It doesn't have the same vesting or rights as the defined benefit, but it is in the plan. Agree with that. And so I would strongly encourage that the board work together and collaboratively with the plan sponsor to either implement the program, because it is something that we're going to need to do together, or have them remove the program if they don't want it. My understanding is the program was put in back before defined contribution programs were generally available to employees, and this was a way for employees to save additional retirement benefits. Since then, the city has put together quite an extensive defined contribution program for its employees to save additional retirement monies. So I think it is appropriate for this board to consider this program of making sure that we can get alignment with the plan sponsor before we try to unilaterally implement this. That is your CEO's suggestion, and I strongly encourage that. And yes, the wheels of bureaucracy are turning a little bit slow. And we have continued to reach out and try to work with the city in trying to get their resolution of this one way or the other. They have a lot of hurdles to overcome if they would like. They have mentioned that they would prefer not to have yet another defined contribution program. They don't think it's going to really help them attract and retain employees. So they would like to work with their represented groups in evaluating whether or not they want to spend the time and energy and resources on this additional program. We wanted to meet with Fiduciary Council because I think Mr. Brewster brings up some very good points, is do we have a fiduciary responsibility? And that, I don't really want to get into Fiduciary Council's opinion because it was not formalized, but there's a different level of duty for this additional contribution program to the rest of the benefits that we administer. So what I would like to do is, as part of this analysis, and the reason I asked the actuary to be in the room is said, well, what if the board just said, yes, we would like to do this? What does that mean? Does this become part of the SDCERS benefit? Is it, was this tied to that? And the answer is no. It's going to operate as a separate benefit program, kind of like a defined contribution program. So it's really not tied to the SDCERS benefit at all. It's something different. And it would make sense to put the structure of that program together for the board's information and also for the plan sponsor and the union's information so that they can make an informed decision. I will say that there are limits to our patience. Some people have more patience than others, and that, we've continued to ask the city to define when and how they're going to address this so that the board can fulfill its obligation to follow the plan design. So I would say we are in the process, and I think it's going to take some time to get through the process. So that's kind of the long and the short of it.
Yeah, thank you. Look, here's the bottom line, is that this is in the city charter. And the city charter can only be changed by a vote of the people. So if the city at some future time decides they want to pull it, and they're in negotiations with all 5 unions right now, and maybe they all agree to it, and that'd be peachy. It doesn't make a difference to me whether it's removed from the city charter or not. What concerns me is we have an administrative role here of offering all of the benefits outlined in the plan to our members. It's not up to us to presuppose what the city might want or might do in the future. And in the meantime, members who might want to avail themselves of this, and I have no idea how many there are being disadvantaged or flat out really prevented from availing themselves of that option. Johnny sent me really good case, which was CAL FIRE versus CalPERS, I think. And it was a case in which the state of California initially, through the legislature, offered the opportunity to make additional contributions, and then 10 years later or whatever, withdrew it through legislative action. The CAL FIRE union took that to court and stated that it was a vested benefit, and ultimately the appeals court sided in favor with the state or with CalPERS or whatever, and it was removed. But what was made abundantly clear in that case was, in the interim, all the employees who were covered by that had the absolute right to make those additional contributions. We are barring that. We are not following the plan. And I think it's a political decision on the city's side to decide what they want to do, and that's totally fine. The outcome of that is fine with me, but I don't think we should be disadvantaging our members or actually just picking and choosing which benefits we're going to offer in the meantime. So, thanks.
Chris, I need to wind this up.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other questions or comments? No? Rosie, we are so happy that you're back. We missed you, and it's just, we absolutely missed you. There were very competent people that took your place. I don't mean to minimize that, but your shining smile is always missed if you're not here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that.
Any questions from staff? Any closed session?
No.
All right. Thank you. So this meeting is adjourned. It's 12:08.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Greg.